Amara saw her sister on the altar, standing beside the man she had loved in silence for years, and realized there was nothing she could do to stop it. Long before love became complicated, there were two sisters, Amara and Joy, who believed nothing in the world could ever come between them. They grew up in a modest house inside a lively street where everyone knew everyone. Their world was small, but it was enough. Amara was the older one by 2 years, thoughtful and observant. Joy, on the other hand, lived up to her name, bright, expressive, and full of laughter that came easily. They were inseparable. They shared clothes. They slept on the same bed, even when there was enough space for two, whispering into the night about the kind of lives they would live when they grew older. They fought sometimes, over little things like borrowed shoes or missing hair ties, but their anger never lasted longer than a few hours. By evening, they were back to laughing as if nothing had happened. If Amara was quiet, Joy spoke for her. If Joy stumbled, Amara steadied her. They were not just sisters. They were each other's safe place. And then there was John. He had always been there, in the background of their lives. He lived a few houses down the street, a quiet boy who kept mostly to himself. He was older than them, tall even as a teenager, with a calm presence that made him seem more mature than the other boys in the neighborhood. They were never close, just greetings in passing, occasional smiles, nothing more. But to Amara, it was never just nothing. She didn't know when it started, this quiet, persistent feeling. Maybe it was the way he carried himself, or how he spoke softly but with intention, or how he never seemed to try too hard to be noticed, yet somehow always was. At first, it was harmless, a small crush, like a secret she wasn't sure she was ready to share. But she told Joy anyway. One night they laid in bed as usual. She had this excited feeling to tell Joy, and suddenly she spilled it. "I think I like John," she said, lying on their bed and staring at the ceiling. Joy had laughed, not unkindly. "That quiet one? Are you serious?" Amara shrugged, suddenly self-conscious. "I don't know. There's just something about him." Joy rolled over to face her. "It's just a crush. It will pass." Amara smiled like she agreed, but it didn't pass. It stayed longer than she imagined, growing in the spaces where nothing else was happening. Years went by and life began to stretch beyond the boundaries of their small street. School turned into work, childhood into adulthood, and slowly, everything began to change. One day, John and his family moved away. There was no dramatic goodbye, no lingering moments, just the quiet knowledge that he was gone. Amara told herself it didn't matter. It was just a childhood crush. And yet, something about his absence felt heavier than it should have. Still, life moved on. She and Joy remained close, even as responsibilities grew and time became less forgiving. They still talked, still laughed, still shared pieces of themselves in the way only they could. Until the day everything began to shift. It started simply with a message. Amara had been sitting on her bed, scrolling absent-mindedly through her phone, when his name appeared on her screen. John. For a moment, she thought she was imagining it. Her heart stuttered as she opened the message. "Hi, Amara. It's been a while." That was all it took. Something old and familiar stirred inside her, something she thought she had outgrown. But no, the feelings were still there. She replied immediately, and in no time they started talking. At first, it was casual, catching up, exchanging stories about where life had taken them. There was no pressure, no expectations, just two people reconnecting after years apart. Amara was so happy that she told Joy about it. "Guess who texted me?" she had said, trying to sound indifferent. Joy barely looked up from her phone. "Who?" "John," she said excitedly as Joy raised an eyebrow, mildly surprised. "Oh, the quiet guy?" Amara laughed softly. "Yes, him. What does he want?" "Nothing, just talking." Joy shrugged. "Okay." And that was it. No excitement, no interest. And no, Joy wasn't jealous of Amara. She just felt that Amara had gotten over him since he moved out. But surprisingly, she hadn't. Amara told herself it didn't matter, because Joy wasn't really paying attention to it that much. But secretly, she was glad, because it meant there was no competition, no complications, just her, and the possibility of something she had quietly hoped for years. John and Amara talked more frequently after that. Conversations stretched longer, deeper. He asked about her life, her dreams, her struggles. He listened in a way that made her feel seen. And slowly, without realizing it, Amara allowed herself to believe. Maybe this time it would be different. Maybe this time they would finally be together. Then, one day, Joy mentioned something casually that made Amara pause. "John texted me today," she said. Amara blinked. "Really?" Joy nodded. "Yeah, just random. We spoke for a while." Amara forced a smile. "Oh, that's nice." And it was. At least that's what she told herself. There was nothing wrong with it. He was free to talk to whoever he wanted. Joy was her sister. There was no reason to feel uneasy, and they weren't dating, so she didn't have issues with that. She ignored the small, unfamiliar feeling that settled in her chest. But time has a way of turning small things into something much bigger. What started as casual conversations between Joy and John slowly became something else. They started talking more, laughed more, connected in ways that went beyond surface-level exchanges. And this time, Joy didn't brush it off because she didn't really have any feelings for John at the moment. She saw John as a friend, and she didn't feel the need to tell Amara everything at first, because it really wasn't serious. Until it was. By the time Joy realized her feelings had grown into something real, something undeniable, it was already too late to pretend it was nothing. That was when she had to summon courage to tell Amara. One evening while they were together, Joy suddenly opened up. "We've been talking a lot," Joy said, her voice quieter than usual. Amara looked at her, searching her face. There was a pause between them that felt unfamiliar, like a small crack forming in something once solid. "And?" Amara asked carefully, sitting up a little. Joy hesitated, fiddling with her fingers. "I think I like him." For a moment, everything went still. The room suddenly became smaller. Amara blinked. She had heard the words, but her mind struggled to attach meaning to them. Then she smiled. It wasn't forced, not entirely. "That's okay," she said softly, her voice steady in a way her chest was not. "He's a good person." And she meant it. She truly did. Because how could she be angry? Joy was her sister. She hadn't taken anything that belonged to her. John had never made promises, never asked her to wait, never even called her his girlfriend. Her feelings were hers alone, unspoken, safe only in the quiet corners of her heart where no one else could see them. So she swallowed whatever discomfort rose in her throat and chose to be supportive. She even reached for Joy's hand and gave it a gentle squeeze, like a blessing she was forcing herself to believe in. But deep down, her heart was shattering. When Joy and John started dating, it was no longer something Amara could ignore. It became real in a way silence could no longer protect her from. It showed up in small things. First, Joy smiling at her phone, disappearing into calls that made her laugh in a different tone, mentioning his name more often like it now carried a place in her life. And each time, Amara would nod, smile, and pretend. But inside, she began to understand something she had been avoiding for a long time. Some feelings don't disappear just because they are unspoken. They wait. And sometimes, they break you quietly while you're still trying to act like everything is fine. Their relationship was real. Permanent in a way that made Amara's chest tighten every time she saw them together. Still, she held on to hope, a quiet, foolish hope that she never said out loud, not even to herself in full honesty. Maybe it wouldn't last. Maybe it was just a phase. Maybe eventually something would change, and when it did, she would be there. She always told herself that. Some moments she forced herself to look away when Joy laughed at his messages. But love doesn't always follow the stories we tell ourselves. Instead of falling apart, Joy and John's relationship grew stronger, more certain, more real in ways Amara could no longer deny. And with every passing day, her hope began to fade, replaced by something heavier and more painful. One sunny Sunday after Joy and John had gone out on a date, and to Joy's surprise, it was a surprise marriage proposal. Joy jumped in excitement while John knelt and asked the golden question, "Will you be my joy for the rest of my life?" John said, kneeling and smiling while holding up the engagement ring. "Yes, I will," Joy replied happily, still excited. Immediately she got home, Amara was the first person she told out of excitement, her eyes shining with happiness, her hands trembling slightly as she spoke. That was it for Amara. The little hope she had finally broke into pieces completely. She smiled. She had practiced that smile so many times it no longer felt like a choice. She hugged her sister and congratulated her. "I'm so happy for you." And she meant it. But she also wasn't happy, because happiness and heartbreak can exist in the same space, and Amara was living proof of that painful truth. Later, when they were alone, the house suddenly felt too quiet, too heavy, like it was holding its breath. Amara finally spoke. "I liked him," she said quietly, almost like she was confessing a crime she had been carrying for years. Joy frowned, confused. "You told me, years ago. It wasn't serious." "It was to me," Amara replied. The words hung between them, heavy with everything Amara had never said, never allowed herself to say properly. Joy looked conflicted now, her expression softening. "But you and him, you were never together." "I know." And that was the worst part. Not that she lost him, but that she had no right to claim she ever had him in the first place. She had no title, no proof, no moment she could point to and say, "He was mine first." Only feelings, only silence, only years of carrying something no one else could see. And still, it hurt like she had been robbed of something real. Joy hadn't betrayed her intentionally, but it still felt like a betrayal, not of actions, but of understanding. After that conversation, something between them changed. Amara started pulling away. At first, it was subtle missed calls, shorter conversations. Joy noticed, but she didn't push. Maybe she didn't know how to fix something she hadn't meant to break, or maybe she hoped time would heal it. But time, in this case, only made the distance more permanent. The wedding came sooner than expected. It arrived like a season everyone was fully prepared for, and everyone was so happy. It was beautiful. Everything about it looked like something out of a story people would admire from a distance. Joy looked radiant, her happiness undeniable in a way that made it impossible to doubt her choice. Her smile wasn't just on her lips, it lived in her entire face, in the way she held herself, in the way she looked at him like she had found something she didn't want to lose. John stood beside her, steady and certain. There was no hesitation in him, no confusion, no conflict, just calm acceptance, like everything had finally fallen into place exactly as it should. And Amara stood there too, smiling, cheering for her sister. When time came for dance, she danced like never before, making sure her sister was comfortable and happy, playing her part perfectly. Joy noticed, and she was happy that her sister was still being supportive. John, on the other hand, didn't know about anything going on between the two sisters, and he really didn't need to know. It was better that way. Every time someone turned to look at her, she gave them what they expected: a proud sister, a happy witness. But inside, she felt like she was standing at the edge of something she could never step back from. It wasn't just a wedding, it was a goodbye. After the wedding, things never went back to how they were. They still spoke, they still saw each other, but the closeness they once had was gone, replaced by something more careful. Like every word now had to be chosen twice before being spoken. That night, Amara laid on her bed and cried bitterly to ease her pain. The heartbreak felt familiar but stronger this time. She had never really loved someone this deeply before, especially as they weren't dating. She soaked her pillow, begging God to take away the pain, 'cause she was so broken. After some minutes of crying, she finally decided that she was going to forget about it. After all, she couldn't be enemies with her sister. Amara decided to create boundaries, not out of anger, but out of necessity. She had to protect herself, her peace, and her mental health. She had to learn how to exist in a world where the man she once loved belonged to her sister. And Joy, she let her. Maybe out of guilt, maybe out of understanding. And honestly, she really wanted that bond they had, but she didn't know how to fix it or tell Amara. But she was still happy. They were still sisters by blood. That would never change. But they were no longer best friends. Joy wasn't okay with it, so was Amara. But she had no other choice. It was her decision. Did you enjoy this story? Let us know in the comments section. Thanks for watching.